Now, efforts are underway to remove the water lettuce from the Vaal River. Yesterday, the Deputy Minister of Water and Sanitation told the Full View that the chemical that was used by Rand Water to try and solve this problem was not authorised. But what impact does this lettuce then have on water availability? We speak now to Professor Anthony Turton from the Centre of Environmental Management. Prof, thank you so much for your time this evening. This water lettuce fest, let's just help our viewers understand its impact and how bad is it for the water?
Yes, the water lettuce is a perplexing problem because it was not known about as a problem until very recently. In the last 3 years, water lettuce has come from nothing to becoming a major problem in the Vaal River. So, we really have a serious problem there. And now the big debate is how do they bring it under immediate control? The only way to eradicate water lettuce is to fix up all of the many water treatment plants, the sewage plants that feed nutrients into the system. That's the only way to fix it up permanently. They can put chemicals on it, they can do whatever they want to in the meantime, but it's just going to add additional chemicals into the system. I personally am not in support of the notion of spraying chemicals onto the water lettuce, but nonetheless, the decision has been made to do that. And the officials have made that decision on their own cognizance, and they must ultimately bear the consequences for that.
And what would the consequences be, Prof? I'm going to get to the chemical and what they've had to say in just a moment, but what would the consequences of this then be?
Well, the consequences of this particular chemical are that there is a significant social concern. In other words, public, a significant portion of the general public is concerned about health issues associated with that particular chemical. This has been litigated all over the world, so it's a highly contentious issue in many countries. And in fact, the chemical has been banned and has had to be rebranded in the EU, for example. So whatever they do, they're between a rock and a hard place, and I don't envy them the decision they have to make. But when they do make the decision to use chemical like that, they certainly, in my view, must anticipate quite a substantial public backlash. Whether it's the right thing to do or not, I mean, they made the decision, they must bear the consequences for that. But the chemical, it is a chemical of concern because there was a very high confidence study done by the Water Research Commission, which is one of the premier research agencies in South Africa. And they published that just at the end of last year. So it's a fairly recent report. And one of the first things they say in the report is that this chemical is known to be teratogenetic. And teratogenetic means that it creates deformities in living tissue. So that's one of the first things that they mention, and that is a significant thing. They also mention the fact that this happens over a generation. In other words, what happens, exposure today can result in teratogenicity in the next generation. So it's an intergenerational thing, and this is a very, very emotive issue, a very, very complex issue. So I'm afraid that having made the decision, I think that they must just brace themselves for public pushback. Whether it's the right decision or not, I don't know. At the end of the day, it's likely to reduce the water lettuce in the immediate short term. But until such time as the wastewater works have been brought under control, then we're simply going to be constantly putting that chemical on the system, and that's going to then just drive more and more of that chemical into society. And I think it's a no-win situation. I think it's a very, very difficult dilemma that they face at the moment.
So, Prof, what does it mean then, listening to what you're saying, in the context of the Department of Water and Sanitation telling us on the show yesterday that the chemical used by Rand Water was not authorised to be used for the water lettuce, but they're now finalising the issue of authorisation?
Yes, it was not, when they originally used it, it was not authorised. So now what they've done is they fast-tracked the authorisation process. Remember, government has got power, they've got authority, so they've got the authority to authorise something. So they've done that. So it's now gone from being an unauthorised chemical to an authorised chemical. But that hasn't changed the public perception of that chemical. And as far as I'm aware, the public perception, just looking at the international data, the public perception is very, very strong. People generally don't, let me put it this way, people that are that are in the know, or people that are concerned about health, and people that are savvy about these matters in general are uncomfortable with the use of that chemical. So that's the reality of it. But will it have an immediate short-term impact? Yes, it will have an immediate short-term impact. But even there are areas of concern, because my area of concern is twofold. The first thing, they talk about using a sublethal dose, which is really not a good thing to do, because a sublethal dose is known to start driving immunity within the target population. And in fact, credible peer-reviewed research coming out of America has shown that there is already immunity in the weeds that are registered for that particular chemical. So that is a fact. Sublethal dose is not a good thing. And the second thing is that they are talking about a sublethal dose in the context that the weevils, the insects that they're releasing, are then going to be able to destroy the plants easier. Well, now, to me, that is also a little bit of a dodgy argument, because either the weevils can do the job or they can't do the job.
So
if the weevils can't do the job, and then they need help. So see, it's not clear to me. To me, it's muddling. They're muddling around the issue.
But should we be taking the risk then, Prof? I'm listening to what you're saying. Should we take the risk?
My personal look, I don't have any decision-making authority at all. So the decision makers have made that decision, and they will have to live with the consequence of that. In my professional opinion, I'm unable to reconcile myself with the use of a chemical like that is so contentious without the risk of public backlash. So if I was in an advisory capacity, I would urge caution. I would urge extreme caution when using the chemical, but I'm not in an advisory capacity, so my opinion really doesn't matter at all. But I will just stand back and watch how society responds, and I'm pretty sure that there are elements of society that will be quite vocal about this.
So when then society is having this conversation and looking at this particular problem and how far it has gone, how much responsibility then do we apportion, for example, to Rand Water, to the Department of Water and Sanitation, or to the Department of Forestries and Fisheries?
Well, yeah, you mentioned a number of departments there, so that's a very interesting fact. So let's unpack that. Firstly, neither Rand Water does not have the capacity to make a difference, because the root cause of the problem is dysfunctional wastewater works in a number of municipalities. Not one municipality, in multiple municipalities. I've just posted on my Facebook page today a map of the entire Vaal River system that shows all of the wastewater works discharging into it. I can't remember exactly how many there are, but there's something like 20 or so. That's in that order of magnitude. So those are in different municipalities. So Rand Water is caught in the middle. They don't have any ability to change those municipalities. And then let's look at the Department of Water and Sanitation. They also don't have the authority to change the behaviour of those municipalities. And then the Department of Environmental Affairs, Fisheries and the Environment, they are unable to also change the municipal behaviour. So COGTA, it's actually a COGTA matter. They've got the authority to change municipal behaviour, but they're not doing it. So, in other words, we're dancing around this issue because the core root cause of this problem is elevated levels of sewage in the system. So that is a fact, and unless we deal with that at individual municipal level and reduce the inflow of nutrients into the system, we're going to continue to have the water lettuce problem, which is then going to continue to be beaten down by the use of chemical, which is then going to drive up public anger more and more and introduce toxins into the system. So in other words, it's a lose-lose outcome as far as I'm concerned, and we have to just turn this around through rational, logical thinking about this problem and getting to the root cause of the problem.
And government saying that now it is working on forming what it calls an anti-pollution water forum. It's going to include experts, university, professors, etc., as well as some of the government officials. Is this what is needed to come up with this comprehensive plan in order to address what's happening? Because it sounds like to me that there needs to be decisive action as well that is taken in order for us to get out of this problem.
The core problem is the enrichment of water with nutrients. That's the core problem caused by the sewage works. That is known technically as eutrophication. There's been a eutrophication working group for many, many years. It's a very well-known, studied topic. We've got 50, 60 years worth of top-level science on that. There's nothing new that any new forum's going to discuss. In fact, within the Department of Water and Sanitation, they have a eutrophication program in the department. So, that capacity is under severe pressure. It's underfunded, under-resourced, doesn't have enough people in it, but they have it within their grasp. So, in other words, to suddenly extend it now to other universities, this is kind of like closing the door long after the horse has bolted. And I mean, I don't want to sound pessimistic. I don't want to point the fingers of blame at anybody here, because I get back to the fact that this is a dilemma. And a dilemma is something for which all alternative solutions are equally painful, are equally unappetizing. So we've got to get ourselves out of this dilemma, and we've got to work our way into a situation where we're dealing with a set of problems, because those problems, each individual problem is something that we can solve. So the bottom line is this: until such time as we can stop the flow of nutrients into the river, we are going to continue to have eutrophic conditions. That's number one. Number two, even if they manage to get rid of the surface floating weed by means of chemical sprays, that has got nothing to do with what then comes in the place of those of the surface floating weeds, which is blue-green algae, cyanobacteria. So the cyanobacteria right now are being competed with by these water lettuce. If you take the water lettuce away, you give more nutrients now to the cyanobacteria, and you also give more light to the cyanobacteria. So we're now converting a floating water lettuce problem into a cyanobacteria problem. And the difference between the two is that cyanobacteria that we have in South Africa produce toxins. And we know about this. It's a very, very well studied field of science in South Africa. We know the species that are involved. We know the toxins that they produce. And we also know that the current water treatment systems in South Africa do not remove those toxins once they're in the water. So we know all of that. There's nothing that's unknown there. So in other words, we get back to the core problem by throwing chemicals at a floating weed in a eutrophic system. All we are doing is we are now giving more sunlight and more nutrients to the other blue-green algae. And of the two, water lettuce on the one hand versus water lettuce there versus the cyanobacteria, I would rather take water lettuce because they're not going to kill me. Cyanobacteria are going to give me Alzheimer's, early onset Alzheimer's. So in other words, this is the dilemma. This is the dilemma. Which one do you accept? And they both are equally bad. So which is the least bad of those two? Sure. And I think the least bad of those two is to get rid of the cyanobacteria, which means you've got to cut down the flow of nutrients.
It sounds like a dilemma indeed, Prof. But thank you so much for explaining it for our viewers in a manner in which all of us understand exactly what's going on here, because sometimes we may not really understand the impact of the chemicals and how difficult of a problem this is in order to be able to resolve. But do appreciate your insights and your time. That is Professor Anthony Turton with the Centre for Environmental Management.